welcome again to our second live stream. This one is a little bit more kind of technical, looking at some of the upcoming features and things like that. It's a chance for you to ask questions to our devs. Really get into kind of asking about what's coming and what the kind of latest update is going to bring. As well, I'm going to be giving away more keys again today, maybe some crates and stuff. So keep watching in the chat for me to post out some hashtags for you to type in. And then I'll draw some winners as we go, and then I'll give out all those keys at the end as well. So let me make some quick introductions. We already know Julian. He was with me last week. He is our co-founder and one of the developers. And also we've got Aaron with us today, who is one of the key developers. He practically built most of the proto alpha and is one of the key designers on the mechanics and stuff. So if you want to know why something is like it is, he's probably the person to ask. With that, I will pass you over to Aaron, who will tell you a little bit about his job and his role within the company. And then from that, he will go on and start showing you some of these awesome changes we've got coming.
For the people who have been testing for a while, you guys already know me. For the people who have recently joined us in testing, I'm Aaron. My core focus within Calistral is mainly on kind of development and the game mechanics, game design, things like this. Over the last year, I've been mostly focused on building this Genesis client up. But I tend to kind of dip my toes in all aspects of the project across the board. And yeah, today we're going to show some exciting new stuff in this new update. I've been working on this for the last couple of weeks. And shall we get started?
Sounds good to me.
Was there anything you want to say before we get started?
No, like I say, I will be putting some things in the chat to give away some keys and stuff, so keep watching that. I think Julian and myself will jump in, but if you want to kind of start going through all the updates and stuff, that's awesome. Sure. Yeah, so we're here for a couple of hours. Just ask us anything. I'm going to keep an eye on both the chat and the Ask Me Anything section on Discord, so go nuts.
All right, let's get started then.
I'm good.
So, you see here we've got a little bit of a redesign on the home screen. So, so as you see, we've got a much more kind of clean and full look to the design here. More links to kind of get access to the information you need, as well as linking out to the various elements outside of the game as well, like the inventory in the store, and soon, hopefully, to be marketplace as well. So we can maybe mention that a little bit later. So this is the first kind of major change is kind of a visual overhaul to the entire client, and we'll kind of go step by step and show you kind of the details. But yeah, this is the home screen, nice fancy layout and stuff like this. Yeah. So next, jumping into the suitcase builder, you'll notice first thing, we're now using the kind of new card component that was kind of brought in the last update into the game. It's now kind of being used everywhere. So as you see here, we have lots of new new kind of card components looking very clean. Next thing you'll notice is we have simplified our kind of triggers for effects. So instead of using these kind of words like, kill or attack or guard, things like this, we're now using more literal English. So, when attacks, when destroys, when played, stuff like this. This should hopefully make effect reading way, way clearer, so that you can understand what the cards do. Another thing that maybe some of you have probably noticed is natives have actually received an entire kind of effect overhaul. So every card we've kind of gone through every card and kind of redone the effects based on this new formula that we'll be showing off in a second. This currently exists for native only, but will later be coming for Mech and Cyborg too. So you can probably start having a read of some of these effects. You'll notice our visuals on attachments are much clearer. You can read the effects very easily. You know, what is this attachment doing? What is it providing? Stuff like that. And you'll notice this new kind of number in the corner, which I'll get to when we get into some games. But yeah, so this is kind of our changes to Suitcase Builder. And you can see it's kind of much cleaner and crisper. And yeah, one other thing is you've probably noticed is the numbers are now multiplied by 100 again. We're just going to try it out, see how it feels, and take it from there. But you know, big numbers obviously equals better. So yeah, yeah, that's Suitcase Builder. So lots of visual clarity improvements, quality of life, things like that. Yeah, lobbies, not much has changed here. Just kind of disclaimer and style updates to match. Leaderboards have also had a visual upgrade. Look a lot cleaner. Also now on leaderboards, you can now see the position of yourself at all times. If you are not kind of, if you're outside of the kind of max size of a certain leaderboard, it will just say, you know, you're outside of that range. But yes, you can now see your own rank regardless of where you are on the leaderboard. What else have I missed on here? So profiles also got the visual treatment. So as you can see, whole client is looking very sharp and fresh. Yep. So I think we can jump into a game.
I was actually
and
wondering,
get into the
was like any change to the font or something? Like also when we went to the home screen, now I just felt like the naming is more sharp somehow. So
yeah, we do have a new font which we've added. Testing out something that may or may not be in the Unity version, potentially, maybe. But yeah, so yeah, font has been changed in certain areas. But yeah, I think we can jump into a game, Julian.
Yeah, definitely fine. Maybe just as a side story. So I'm like really excited. Well, about a lot of things, but what you just explained for the Suitcase Builder, I think it's pretty cool to now have this, like, you know, highlights on the keywords and the kind of like plain English description to understand it better. Just maybe to share with everybody who's also actively playing and testing. Yeah, especially when we notice like these kind of like visual things. I know we always like communicate, hey, it's just a prototype, right? Which is like about the game mechanics. But then again, of course, Aaron and me, we also like talk a lot about, okay, how can we improve it, you know, in a way that it's like a little bit easier to understand and, you know, get a really good playing experience. Because yeah, now that we kind of like public and also onboard a lot of players, we still treat this client in a way that, you know, people can have a good joy with the game. And it's just funny how sometimes we have this like, yeah, it's a prototype. It's probably like heavy load to kind of like implement this visual changes because it's not, you know, originally made for it. But then it's usually like always 1 week later, just Aaron just like pushes all the stuff in, and then even more. And it's usually very, very funny to go through this journey all the time. But then later, yeah, we're just very happy with like, you know, having the UI much more cleaner and have people better understand the game and stuff like that. So yeah, really excited to see what kind of feedback we get there from like the people who have been testing for a while.
For sure. And just one other thing which I completely forgot, but it has been flagged in the past by certain individuals. You can now scroll your suitcase list. So yeah, there's no cap, so to say. It's now
no limitation to just
intended.
14.
Yeah. You can now scroll your suitcases. Woo.
Sorry guys, there's a question coming. Are there any plans to introduce more varied stat lines like 350, or is it just for more visuals?
I'd say at this time we haven't really mentioned anywhere it needs to be 350. But yeah.
I mean, you never know. Happy to test, but I think the idea is just like the bigger numbers just fit more kind of like the space that we see us in. Like if you compare to other trading card games, which are maybe more for kids, I feel like okay, small numbers maybe make sense, but like yeah, we just want to have this feeling of being very powerful creatures and stuff like that. It's not really to try to like divide it more down, and then you have like 397 attack, which will be just very annoying to deal with. So yeah, it's just like a bit of testing. Like originally it was in the hundreds, then we cut it down to simplify it and save some space, and now we just kind of like decided to go back to the higher numbers because yeah, for us it just feels more powerful and more fun. But yeah, probably not the final decision anyway.
So it just looks cool, basically.
Yep.
And that's what matters. Also, do we have to build a new suitcase?
Probably, because a lot of the mechanics have changed. You might have a different kind of priority on things, which we'll kind of talk about when we get into a game. A lot's changed, so suitcases probably naturally also change. But you also don't have to if you don't want to. It's just the effects might be different.
Cool.
Yeah. Let's jump into a game and get going.
I actually only have one suitcase for this version. I didn't build too much, but yeah, I guess Aaron knows which one I play for sure.
Okay, so as you can see, we have a completely new visual on the game board. We're using proper assets, like really clear, should feel more kind of, as we intend. So yeah, the river kind of matches more what we expect. The game board matches more what we expect. The cards, obviously, from before are what we expect. Styling kind of across the board is kind of been overhauled. But yeah, there's a lot to go over here. And Julian, I think we should play kind of quite slowly because the turn timers are 90-second now.
Yeah, I can go.
We should have probably done a lobby game, actually. We should have probably done a lobby game. I don't know why we did this.
It's fine. Let's go hardcore.
Okay. So there's a lot to talk about here. So I'm going to have to go one by one. So first things first, we have new tooltips. So cards now have tooltips which kind of stick to the location of said card, makes it much easier to understand, what is this card doing, gives me the information, and it's also much more kind of contextualized. So the information that is displayed should, in theory, be the kind of information that is needed. And we try to hide anything that may not be needed at a certain location. Now, probably some of the biggest changes are resources have been heavily looked at. The first change being energy has been removed entirely. As you'll see, there's no numbers on any of these cards, which basically means if I have it in my hand, I can play it. So if I show you like so. In terms of credits, cards no longer have like individual credit values. Instead, we simply say you can buy one card per turn as like a default, and mining now provides an extra buy. So if I play these cards, you'll see I now have 3 purchases, which I can now take any of these cards, like so, and just overall simplified. I guess it's actually good to go into this right now. So while we've worked on Genesis for a long time, we basically currently felt like there are some core fundamental issues with the kind of game loop in that the UI is very overcomplicated. It takes a long time to explain. There's like too many mechanics, and basically over time we've kind of like bandage fixed problems by adding more and more things, which has eventually led to the kind of complexity that we have right now. So the overall goal here was to simplify and basically review every single mechanic and just say, hey, do we need this mechanic? And if we do need it, how can we simplify it or improve it? So another change, for example, is that remodel is no longer in the game. Right now, you can only purchase cards and they just get added to your deck. Very simple. God, there's a lot of things. It's hard to kind of like not just gonna go right now. There's this. Now there's this. Now there's this.
I think you put a good starting point already, right? Like just to tell the whole story, like how our thoughts went. And I think The main point that you mentioned is definitely one goal that we recently had a lot, is just to, well, get rid of the complexity, which, yeah, you said that the reason, because there were like, features and features being put on top and on top to kind of like, solve certain problems. I think another factor that was very heavy and I found really interesting throughout like the last month or like last 2 months was that we kind of like noticed a little bit of conflict between the two genres that we kind of like try to mix together here. Because I mean, that's also what we call it, right? Like Synergy of Serra is like a deck building trading card game. So it's like a combination of deck builder and a combination of trading card game. And yeah, it was just very interesting to see or like how we kind of like got to the root cause of certain problems where gameplay wise we didn't really like stuff still and wanted to improve it, and always found out that we just like have this different conflicts between these two genres. So for example, one thing that is kind of like in this version now that I think kind of like the biggest impact is that we remove the resources, because I would argue that most deck builders you're usually allowed to play anything you want, or you have kind of like a action point system, so that you have like maybe one action per card type or something in that direction. For example, in Dominion, and then you have like certain elements that kind of like increase that you get to get more actions and stuff like that. So it just felt like from the core mechanic and Synergy of Serra, of course, that's a deck builder, but then more like what happens on the battlefield is more like the trading card game. And yeah, it just felt like an approach that was really interesting to us to see like, okay, can we pull it off, like to remove the resources to get more onto the deck builder part in this direction, but then at the same time, be able to keep the TCG part from the battlefield, because like if suddenly everything is for free, it could go very crazy. So I think that was like the biggest main starting point where we went from, and then at the same time, like, try to lower the complexity. And it was like kind of like a chain reaction of things that then we needed to adjust to kind of like, get this feel that we wanted to get. And just I don't know, like it's like the frame of like why we even made so many changes, and why also a lot changed. It just like came all together to kind of like wrap this package between like solving the issues that we still saw of like creating this faster paced game, while at the same time like trying to simplify everything.
Just to jump in there, somebody has asked what was the reason of having remodel gone? Sorry, they missed it.
Oh, okay.
So just if you could clarify again of why I think you chose to get rid of remodel.
Sure. Remodels felt as though it existed as a system that actually, let me rewind a bit. It was a system that we introduced to solve this problem of this need to replace early cards with later ones, because the early cards became redundant. And so rather than saying, hey, we need cards to be redundant early, we've now kind of made it more along the lines of like cards should somewhat have a relevance throughout. And if you kind of meet this goal of saying like a card should kind of be relevant throughout, you no longer need to remodel it. So for example, with the starter cards, these were the most common ones to need to remodel. What we've done is, for example, so draw is removed. Energizer is removed. Mining is now +1 buy, which is relevant for the majority of the game. It also provides faction points, which we haven't kind of gone into yet. So for faction points, the points now come from cards, most commonly powers. So if you see here where I'm hovering this ancestral knowledge, you'll see this +5 FP with a green background. And that basically means that I get 5 native faction points when I play this card. And so, like I said, so rather than having this system where we have cards that we're acknowledging are redundant, we're now trying to make it so that the redundant cards are much lower in quantity, and they do not cause as many kind of roadblocks in your cycling. So some of the other changes that we've kind of made is, for example, the void pile has been removed. We only have a draw pile, and the kind of old cycle mechanic. So essentially, once a card is destroyed, it's put on the bottom of the draw pile, and you just draw continuously. Now, you may then say, aren't I able to play cards over and over again? And yes, but that's also the intention of the game, is that we want the cycling to be the kind of one of those core mechanics. And the way we've addressed this is by saying, well, fatigue is now a mechanic that says when you cycle your deck, you take damage. So every time I cycle, for example here, if I play Ancestral Knowledge, I'm going to draw 2 cards because my opponent has 2 units. If I play this card, you'll see I take 200 damage. Every time you cycle your deck, you take a flat 200 for now. And this way the game is always progressing, and you're kind of encouraging cycling to take place. Rather than trying to lean away from cycling too much, we're now saying, you know what, cycle as much as you want, but you're going to take damage for it, which encourages you to buy more cards. 1 second, let me just play this turn. Not that we're playing properly here, but yeah.
Yeah, it's already missed a turn. I just keep you talking, so I get a better chance to win. That's fine. Keep going. Keep doing it good.
Okay. So now we're kind of explained why Remodel is gone, because we don't see it as a necessary part of the core game. If we go back to faction points for a second, faction points has always been something that it's like it's something we want to exist but has never quite felt right. And so we ended up trying out this system of this kind of growing and spending, which other games typically have. Now you might be asking, spending? We don't spend in Genesis. So the way that the kind of faction points and enhanced system now tie in together is you kind of build your faction points with powers and effects. And then what happens is, sadly I don't have a card. Oh, I can actually. Yeah, this is actually perfect timing. It's almost like it's scripted. So these two systems have always existed, and they kind of work together, but they've never felt just quite right. And so what you do now is you gain your faction points through effects. And let's say I have this Metron Courier here, and I want to enhance him. Well, if I click him, I can enhance him. Now, the difference here is, and you'll notice that my mech faction points are now back at 0 because I spent the 20 enhance cost to now enhance this unit. And the way that enhance now works is once you enhance a unit, it remains enhanced for the remainder of the game. And this is our mechanism for progress. This is how we control early, mid, and late game. At the start of the game, you have your base units. Oh, and this is something else. Every unit now has no effect on the base form. You only gain those effects by enhancing. And what this allows it for is every game can be heavily varied because you can change the ordering that you're enhancing units, which just opens up so many different options for strategy. Like one game I can say, right, I'm going to go Courier first, into Haggler second, into Cridian Tinkerer third, and then the next game I can do it in the other order, and it can completely change how the game is played. And this way, you start the game with no enhanced units. A few turns later, you get 1 enhanced unit. A few turns later, you get a second. A few turns later, a third. And this is how we develop our stages of the game. And this lets you do some really, really, kind of unique strategies. Basically saying so in this case, if I enhance this Courier, I can now say Plasma Shield is the backbone of my strategy now. The other cool thing of this new system is because we have effects that can kind of grant all faction points, so some effects are specific to one faction, other effects are to all factions. What this now means is there's even more combinations that I can do, because unlike the current Genesis version, I can now buy, for example, in this case, because of the points I've been generating through the different effects I've been buying, I could now buy a native unit, for example, and enhance it because I've been building the points for it on the side. And even though, let's say, you're generating less of the points, it allows for the option to eventually get to 1 or 2 of them, to provide this kind of multi-faction gameplay. So yeah, we've put a lot of time into kind of reworking how enhance and faction points work, and it really feels that we kind of have got. This is the first time that I've personally felt like fully happy with the system. There's always been things I've wanted to adjust with prior systems, and this one is also far easier to understand. Again, leaning back into this goal to reduce complexity.
Yeah, I think that's like the cool thing, right? It's like the combination. Like while we reduce complexity, we at the same time solve different problems that came along with it. And I mean, I also mentioned it on the last stream, right? Because I think from any other question, what I'm most excited about, and I still have the feeling like we tried so many different things to go more into this like multi-faction game, but it never truly really worked. So in the end, I feel like this is like the first time I really like the way to play multiple factions at the same time, which can just sometimes mean, you just add this 1 or 2 cards from different factions. That's totally fine. But like in the end, if you have like 100 cyborg points and 100 mech points and you don't really spend them, I would be sure that you lose out on certain things you could do. And yeah, this is just super cool, I think. Also to add to your explanation for the enhanced system, it's also important to understand that now when you enhance, yes, you spend these points, but at the same time, the enhancement is permanent. So again, coming to this kind of like idea that we had for the game, that you kind of like, also progress the units through the game. I think this is like part of it, and you also progress like your strategy to it. It's not like having this back and forth anymore in the faction points, which we kind of like and was kind of cool that, enhanced, de-enhanced, but at the same time, it's just like so overcomplicated and complex to understand what is happening. So that is pretty cool. And what I also really like that was very important that we looked into is just like kind of anything that is happening really comes straight from what you see on the card. So we don't have this like, okay, you get faction points here and there and whatnot, and it goes back and forth, and depending on the time, like, yeah, it was just like so overcomplicated. Now it's pretty clean. You have on the card, hey, you get the 3 faction points in native when you play this card, or I don't know, when you play this unit, you get like whatever 2 faction points per power that you play, something like that. So I feel like it's very straightforward to kind of like know what is going on, which probably before in the version 1.10 is much harder, I guess, just to even notice like, hey, how many points do I get from where and why, and when do my units enhance and disenhance. Now you kind of like, yeah, have more control over it. It's also something I really think changed in a very positive way.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people just looking and reading the chat actually think this is a really good feature. There has been a couple of questions. No, that was you replying to Summerflame. How much you need to enhance?
Well, no, I can still go over Summerflame's question because it is one of the core changes.
Yeah, go with that then.
So, the question is, can we go over the attachment changes? Now, okay. So the current Genesis version has attachments working in a way which is kind of memed on at this point, where it's like the starting journey of a Serran is you kind of start the game, you get angry because you don't know how attachments work, and then eventually you figure it out, and then it changes how you play, right? But this obviously indicates that there is something kind of wrong with the behavior, because it should be something that feels quite natural and expected. The way we have now adjusted this for attachments is attachments are now played onto the board again. But it's not only that. Instead of dragging to a specific slot, you can actually just drag it straight to the unit. So the interaction is far more intuitive. And what it will do is it will just put it into the next available slot. Now, you might be saying, well, what if I just want to put it in a certain slot? What if I want to replace stuff? So the change in this version is that you actually can't replace attachments anymore. So once you've put an attachment on a unit, it's now attached to that unit until it's destroyed. This basically means that attachment slots now function as kind of like limited, limited attachment slots. Once they're full, they're full. Which allows us to kind of put a lot more power into attachments at the same time, make them more significant. And you've noticed here, so I was saying before about how powers typically lean more in towards gaining faction points as their like secondary use case. So for attachments, their secondary use case is more about drawing cards. Because before I said, we've removed the draw card from the starting set, which used to be the kind of backbone of kind of cycling. Well, now most attachments have a drawing element to them. which accelerates the gameplay, being one of our other core focuses. So now attachments will typically cycle themselves. And an additional reason for this is because now when a unit is destroyed, the attachments are separated. The reason for this is because of the nature of the gameplay now in terms of fast cycling. What we don't want is to get into a case where you're focused on having low deck sizes. So even in the case where they separate, because they draw additional cards, the separation shouldn't impact the kind of it shouldn't act as like a dead draw that would have otherwise occurred. So basically attachments have been simplified but also given a significant role to make them different from powers. And the way we kind of like to look at this is attachments are kind of more like your permanent customizations for a unit, and powers are like your supporting temporary effect based on a certain situation or scenario. Because you've probably also noticed that attachments have typically 3 elements to them. They have the stats that they provide, and then they have the effects that they provide. So one of those typically being draw, and then the other one being its actual attachment effect. So we have this kind of stat climbing gameplay now. I just noticed I'm at 100. I'm going to die in a second. But anyway. I haven't really been focusing.
Yeah, I told you I take advantage of that you're talking so much. Usually you win most of the games. So.
It's fine. Yeah, so where was I? Yeah, so attachments have this role of kind of stat climbing your units, because now another change we've made is that breakthrough is now like a default thing across the board. So anytime am I able to example ancestral knowledge? No, of course not, because I didn't get any attack stuff. But you might have noticed through the game that when you attack with a unit that has like higher attack than the defending unit's defense, the difference is dealt as damage. And the reason for this is, again, going back to, we wanted the gameplay to become more fast-paced. We wanted every turn to matter. We want these moments where you can really have these swingy turns. So now breakthrough is on by default to kind of accelerate and just push even when you're just trading back and forth, the game is moving towards an end point, because I think it happens all too often in Genesis where you get into this board state of, I play my board, I kill your board, you kill my board, and then you play your board, right? And we get into this back and forth where the life is not going down and you're just kind of waiting for fatigue to kill someone, which doesn't feel very fun or healthy. So in this case, it's like you've got more choices to make. And every turn you should move eventually towards that end thing. And yeah, so this follow-on question as well, which is like, what does the starting deck look like now? Well, when I end my turn, I'll die. Yep. So we can hop into another game. Let's go into a lobby game, by the way.
Yeah, sure.
So the starting deck is now reduced to 6 cards, which you both start with at the beginning of the game. Those 6 cards are the 2 dummies that we've got right now. And then the 2 attachments, which we have right now, and then 2 mining cards. Essentially meaning that every card should be relevant for kind of majority of the game. And by the time you get later on, you should have so many draw effects that they don't really lose relevance anymore. Because the attachments give all faction points. I just realized I didn't update these to say faction points instead of faction research, but yeah. Yeah, so the attachments give faction points, the powers give faction points in addition to their effects, and so they remain relevant. But yeah, so you start the game with six cards. You play your 2 buys. You buy 3 cards on turn 1. So in this case, if I take this, and this, and then when I end my turn, you draw 5 again, right? So this is kind of like the starting. This is how the game begins. And over time, the goal here is that you want to just keep buying and buying and buying, because you're cycling so quickly now. And you can do some really cool comboing, because another kind of thing we felt was in the current gameplay, the Synergy of Serra was kind of missing the synergy aspect. And now there should be a lot more, I play 1 card, which lets me play another card, which lets me play 2 more cards, which, yeah.
Yeah. So Lapo is like giving a lot of feedback on the breakthrough thing, which I think is cool. I mean, first of all, right, if it doesn't work out, we would just change it back. Why not? I found it quite interesting because I remember when Aaron proposed this idea, I was also like very skeptical that maybe goes too crazy or anything. But then I don't know, we usually do is just like, okay, let's implement it and test it, right? And if it doesn't feel good, we would change it back. And I mean, internally, we have played a lot of games with like different versions over like the last few weeks. And there were, I don't know, at least like 20 updates of completely different crazy ideas just to see how they feel. And, you know, there's a lot of back and forth. And we had a lot of ideas which like sounded awesome, but then they didn't feel right. And the other way around, where I was very critical over the breakthrough. But as soon as we had it in, I actually felt like, well, it kind of like worked. I mean, yeah, maybe it was like not the very intense, crazy game that we played the round before. But if you paid attention to the round counter, we were at like round 8. And yeah, just like Aaron said, it just feels way better to have a little bit of faster game, which turned out to be very true. I think in all games that we played, Aaron, now in this version, we ended around between 8 and 11 rounds, which was very smooth and perfect. I think like breakthrough is
like 8 to 13.
It's like a big key factor why that works. And yeah, I don't know. I can only say I really like it. We of course are always happy to get feedback and also see how it turns out when there are like thousands and thousands games of being played. You will only know when you test it. But yeah, I think it's just cool to that we internally try all the ideas that we have and not just say, hey, whatever, we don't like it, right? Like as long as you don't feel it, you can't really tell if it's like right or not, like what you're looking for or not. And I don't know, so far breakthrough has been pretty positive, even though I was skeptical to begin with. It just feels right.
Also, just to add on to this, with the kind of mention of like, well, you kind of eliminate the need to go like face decks and things like this. Well, it's actually kind of the opposite because now you have additional options because you now have the choice of, hey, do I trade? In which case you might also lose your unit. And you might also take damage on your unit to kill off another unit and get a little bit of chip damage, or you can just send the whole thing face and deal more damage and your unit stays alive, right? But then your opponent gets to kind of react. So it's one of those things that it's like, yeah, like Julian said, is at first it sounded something that was like, what the hell do you mean? Like, that sounds crazy. But when you play with it, it actually feels like the pace of the game is kind of what you expect. And it opens up new avenues that we wouldn't have otherwise had. To increase, basically you want to encourage this trading, this unit to unit kind of fighting, but you also want the game to end at a reasonable pace, which is the piece that was missing from Genesis. It's like if you got into this back and forth trading, the game just didn't end. So it's one of those things I think is like, it sounds kind of crazy, but that's kind of why we want to push it out there and just see how it feels when many people are playing. Does this feel good? Is this doing what we want it to do? So yeah. It's one of those things that we just kind of tested, felt really good, and now we want other people to test it and let us know if it feels good.
Yeah, I guess it can be very annoying if somebody just goes straight to your face, but then at the same time, we also feel like, yeah, it should be a viable strategy. So I'm certain it will always exist, and it just like, it should just not be every game, right? Where all the people all the time go to the face, and that's like the only strategy that exists. That's not really fun, but like it should still be, you know, advantages to potentially do that in certain games where you go on like certain strategies. So if you really expand on the strategy, then it will be possible, I guess.
Yeah, there's also certain scenarios, and there's like this fantasy which kind of inspired this idea, which also came about through the attachment stuff. It's like a really interesting dynamic for me to have this like really cool moment with like, I play, you know, let's say your opponent has this really big unit on the board and I play my small unit and I attach it with like 2 attachments which boost its stats to like just get above the defense of the other unit. And not only do I get to trade it off, but I'm actually dealing a little bit of damage at the same time. So this stat climbing gameplay adds this element of just like, it should just feel really cool when you manage to take down this big unit, which was something that we didn't really we couldn't really do in Genesis, and it was something for the people who tested a while ago with like the original Ulkia, for example. You know, it was like this huge issue where you play this unit and it's got like these crazy stats like 15, 15, 16, 16, but there's no way to deal 16 damage. And right now it's like we can kind of push those limits of numbers because there are ways to climb your stats up to that number, which doesn't kind of set you back, because let's say in the current Genesis version, it's like if I can get a unit to have 10 attack or 20 attack, I'm very unlikely to want to trade that unit in, because why would I waste the opportunity to deal 15 damage, right? Or 20 damage? Whereas now I can say, oh, wow, I managed to get my unit up to 20 attack and I can trade it off and deal damage. But it's going to be less damage, but yeah, it just adds this dynamic where it's just like really cool moments. And yeah, I just saw the question about this number above the end turn, and there was also another question I saw before that regarding how does the river kind of operate now. So this blue number here, it shows the round number, but it also serves as like two functions, and it's like it is the round number, but it's actually more kind of importantly something else, and the something else is speed. So the way the speed system works is quite similar to how the old credit system works, in that before credits was the cost, but it was also the kind of pace that cards would be displayed in the river. So basically now we've kind of stripped away the cost aspect, and it simply functions as the round counter or the speed counter, however you want to look at this, is kind of the maximum speed of cards that can display in the river. And I just noticed I'm not displaying speed on other cards, so I need to add that in. But yeah. If you notice, like Telekpa Mercenary, it has a speed of 1, and if you notice Telekpa Rallier, it has a speed of 2, which basically means on round 1, I can see Mercenary, and I can't see Rallier, but on round 2, I can see Rallier and Mercenary and everything below it. So this is kind of how we control what cards are showing up in the river, which gives us the control to have like later cards show up later, or strong cards to show up later, things like that. Yeah, so this is a new system called Speed. Just very simply, it just controls the pace of the games. Okay.
Yeah. There's also the question like why we kind of like remove the credit system so everything costs the same. And what I felt like is that it in the 110 version right now, it feels like it takes most of the turn to think about how you spend your resources, which is totally fine, because I think especially for like any trading card game, that's like one big aspect of what people enjoy, to figure out, hey, I have these resources, how can I use my turn to make the most of it, right? And if you do that every turn and you do it better than your opponent, then at some point you will kind of like also outscale your opponent. So it's always cool to think about it. We just felt like that it's too much of the time that you spend just thinking about these resources instead of just thinking, hey, which card do I want? So now it's just like, oh, I want this. That's part of my strategy. Click it, done. Same for what do I have in my hand, right? It's not so much about what it costs, because it doesn't cost anything more. The question is more like, what is the best way that I can combine it and have the most impact? And we just felt like, yeah, why not just focus on these things? Because that's how we want to make the game feel like. Thinking about the strategy, thinking about what cards you want, how do you want to combine them, creating synergies, and then have a very fast-paced game. So not spending just this whole time on calculating your resources, how to spend them. It doesn't really, impact how fun the game feels. If instead you just use the time to, just like buy whatever you want and then play as much as possible to combine stuff and just kind of like screw over your opponent or anything like that, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got a question about like, well, with this system, how do we kind of control, kind of the power level of cards, and obviously just like playing them and stuff like this, because before, the energy cost would have been higher, the credit cost would have been higher. Now we have a few mechanisms here, which is like why the system is actually really nice and like easier, is that if we have a so for any card, if we feel its power level is higher, we can simply increase the speed of that card, which basically means it's going to show up later in the game. So that's one mechanism we have. If we're talking about a unit, Because the effects are only on the enhanced form, we can increase the enhanced cost so that it's kind of like a bigger investment to get its effect. So that's another mechanism. When it comes to the powers, because, you know, if powers have no cost, it must be crazy, right? Well, they've got the speed element, but another thing that we're kind of introduced across the board is this idea that, like, cards should all be kind of the best for different situations. So in the case of a power, it's like we can also increase the power of a power, which that's an interesting way of, like, an interesting sentence. But yeah, we can increase the power of that power, but we can also give it a condition which is harder to fulfill. So this is something that we, as I mentioned earlier, native has been completely overhauled. All the stat lines, all the effects, everything. And there's this approach for powers now, which is like no power should be this card that kind of does anything for anyone at any time. They all have some sort of condition to them. So if you see here in the case of Urban Ambush, it says if you have less units in play than your opponent, right? So this is the condition to play this card. If it didn't have that condition, this card would probably be pretty broken. For Bioplasmatic Bolt, which has been a kind of a problem card for a long time, it now says deal 100 damage for each ally native unit in play. Which means you need native units, right? So I'm not just going to buy this card because it's a default best deal 2 damage, right? So we have a lot of mechanisms now which we didn't have before to kind of control power levels of cards and still make sure they're balanced. Yeah. So like in this case, this is a really good example. I have Urban Ambush. He has 3 units. I have 2. So I can play this card and it's going to absolutely destroy his board because they take, you know, they get reduced by 100. And now Julian's very sad. And then I'm going to equip this. And you see here, this is the power of enhance, right? So previously, you know, if you reach a threshold, you get the enhance. In this case, it's like I played the mercenary, and now I have the option. Do I want to enhance and charge? Do I want to spend my points, reduce myself back to 5, but I now get to deal 300 extra damage, and I now have this enhanced unit for the rest of the game, which is what I was saying, like, this system has been so fun because you have these choices to make. You can route yourself in a different way from game to game. So maybe this game I say, yeah, it's worth spending the points. Next turn I say, nah, it's not worth it. Now, going back to another thing where we said Synergy of Serra is missing the synergy. So I have Rallier, which its new effect is, when attacking, give 200 attack to another ally unit until the end of the turn. So let's assume I don't have this dummy this turn, right? I just played Mercenary, enhanced it to give it charge. Now I'm going to attack with Rallier to give extra attack to Mercenary to deal extra damage with the charge from the enhance. So now we're starting to bring in the synergy aspect. And then on top of that, I've got Bioplasmatic Bolt, which reads deal damage for each ally native. I have 2 on the board. Again, another synergy. Beautiful. Big turn. Yeah.
I think we got over most of the elements. Biggest question always, tell me better ask when. Aaron, tell me.
Okay.
Not tell us.
So, as soon as possible, we have a few bugs to fix. And once those are fixed, we will be getting the patch live. So, hopefully early next week will be when we can release this. But there is actually one more kind of. Let me just. I'm just checking off my list. Make sure that we've actually covered everything. But there is one thing we haven't gone over yet. So yeah, we've gone over the new game board visuals, we've gone over the new river visuals, we've gone over the new tooltips, we've gone over the new starter deck, we've gone over the starter life is, actually, I can't remember if we went over this, but yeah, starter life is now 4,000 instead of 3,000, just to include that kind of leeway for the changes with taking more damage from fatigue and the breakthrough stuff. We've gone over the energy being removed. We have gone over the credits being simplified. We've gone over the new speed system. We've gone over the... Oh, actually, I don't know if we mentioned this. But yeah, so the way refresh works now is it's very simple. Once per turn, you can refresh. There's no cost to it. It's completely set to everything. This is a way that we can kind of reduce the kind of RNG factor in a way. So yeah, with more card draw on attachments, with more refreshes on the river, you should feel that the randomness is still, you know, it still exists, but it's more controllable to an extent. Let me just play my turn out. Okay. So for example here, this is a good example of what I was saying about like the stack climbing aspect. So here I've given my attack dummy 200 extra attack, which lets me get over the D dummy. Now, in a previous case in Genesis, I would be saying, well, actually, no, I want to hit face with this 400 damage, right? Because why would I care about the D dummy? But in this case, I might say, well, I've climbed above his stats, and I'm still going to deal some damage, so it's still worth trading this. Obviously, that's for you to determine, but this is kind of part of the point that we're saying. But yeah, we've gone over remodel is removed. We have gone over the void pile is removed. We've gone over the new attachments. We've gone over the new faction point system. We have gone over the new enhance system. We have gone over breakthrough. Okay. So, another thing which you might have noticed already, might not, is we currently have this card pop-up thing, which we've always used for powers. So when you use a power, it pops up. This functionality is now extended to attachments. So when you attach an attachment, it will pop up saying, you know, it's been used. And on top of that, when an attachment's effect is used, so for example, if you have an attachment that says when attacked, or when attacking, sorry, when you attack, it will pop up as well as the log to kind of indicate like, hey, this effect has just gone off. So that's another kind of extension of that utility. Something missing from Genesis is a lot of like the feedback. So like when I do something, kind of having a response that says like, hey, this thing has happened. So we've tried to add some more of that. So yeah, so now you have feedback when a power is played, you know what your opponent's playing, and now you have feedback when attachments are played and also when their effects go off. Yeah, another change is that turn timer is dropping to 90 seconds. Obviously, it's been a kind of heavily discussed point that 2 minutes is probably too long. This was kind of there for the newer players because it does take time to get used to things. But now with how we've tried to simplify the overall kind of game loop, we're hoping that 90 seconds should kind of help it in some way. And obviously, if we need to adjust it further, then we can do that. Yeah, we have missed one big feature. So I kind of hinted it a long time ago that we wanted this visibility on the river. Because it's kind of difficult to build a strategy when you don't know what's available for the future. And so we have this thing called strategy terminal. Now, this is a feature that is probably not something you want to really care much about if you're like a beginner. This is more something when you kind of get into the game, once you know how the cards work and stuff like this. But essentially, if you open this up, you'll basically see it has an entire overview of the river broken down by speed. So you can kind of see like what cards are available at any time in the game. It also shows you how many copies of a card is in the game. So these little circles above will show you the number of copies that are actually available in the game. And when a card is purchased, you'll notice that the orb kind of fades out. So you know how many are left in the river. Now, we've also moved the kind of, you know, deck list of what you've purchased into this window too. So there's also some other cool stuff that this can do. So for example, at the beginning of the game, I say, I want to go for this strategy with this bodyguard, right? Well, what I can do is I can come into the strategy terminal at the start of the game, and where is he? I can come to bodyguard, and if I click it, you'll see one of the orbs turns blue. And this is basically saying, I want to buy one copy of this card. If I want to buy more, I can just click it more, as many cards as copies I want. And if you right-click, it will reduce the copies. Now, when you have a card that is kind of flagged as like you want this card, if you look at the river, it's glowing. So you kind of mark the cards saying like, hey, I'm kind of intending to go this route. And when they show up in the river, they glow so that you don't miss them. So yeah. Really useful stuff to kind of plan out your strategies, because this was kind of part that was missing. And yeah, you can kind of open this anytime, use it as much as you want. The turn timer is still going to tick, so you know you don't have long. It's kind of there for those that want it. It's an experimental feature, but it's you know it's useful for those that want it, and we'll see how it does for now.
Yeah.
But yeah,
would have added the same disclaimer that it's kind of like experimental. Also how it looks like, maybe we can also still change it and stuff like that. But like, I think what it's just like, right, why not push it in, and then you guys can play around with it and give some feedback if you like it, if you don't like it, stuff like that. I mean, yeah, nothing is fixed at that point. I think what we kind of just had the main feeling on is that the core idea before the game starts is like that you mix the decks and so you can play with your opponent's cards, right? And I think what it has turned out so far, at least on our end, the feeling to, yeah, sure, once in a while I play my opponent's cards, but for example, if I start the game and the first river, let's say 5 of the 6 cards are from my opponent, I'm probably very much afraid to buy 2 of his cards because I wouldn't know what else they brought, right? So I think it's still like a little bit of a barrier to really go all in, just say, hey, well, it seems like my opponent brought native cards, so why don't I, play a little bit native, whatever face strategy? But only because you see a sapling, you would never know if there's even like a second sapling or any other cards that for the strategy, which I think is quite fair to say, hey, now you can check it out and you kind of like know what there is and you can, kind of like steal their cards or steal their strategy, which I think is super cool and really something that we want. And the opponent also needs to be able to deal with that, right? You cannot just go to the table and say, hey, I played a certain strategy, because now your opponent is even more incentivized to see what strategy you may want to build or may not want to build. And you can play this strategy, or you can even steal certain cards that you would need for this strategy. So I think in this sense, it gets, like much more competitive, and also opens up this option to really go like full straight in on like completely different strategy than the suitcase that you brought. And I think it's very like a positive.
Yep. Yeah. But yeah, so this is just, as Julian mentioned, this is like a feature that we kind of built it. It felt decent, and now it's just like put it out there, get some feedback, and yeah, see how it goes, really. But we don't want this game to turn into a thing where it's like you're spending 90% of the game in here, because that would kind of be not that fun, right? But yeah, we'll see how it progresses. And just to show you, so obviously, yeah, I selected this card, and if I just purchase it, you'll notice now one of those copies is now kind of grayed out. Yeah, so outside of this, there's kind of performance improvements kind of behind the scenes that should hopefully, improve things for people across the board on different systems. The way that, end of turn effects have been implemented has been completely rewritten. So, none of those century... Oh yeah, so it's been renamed. None of those like century, mishaps anymore. Other end turn effects should kind of happen at the end of the turn, like they're supposed to. And yeah, there's kind of like just bug fixes scattered throughout. Throughout the game. So it's super exciting times. But yeah, I think that's all the core stuff. I don't know if there's more questions.
I don't know if anyone's got. Oh, somebody has just asked. Will there be PvE style of gameplay like the Tavern in Hearthstone? Apologies if I missed the discussion.
I think, Julian, you mentioned this in the last stream briefly. So me personally, I would love us to do something similar to like chess puzzles. So each week, let's say there's like a new puzzle. This is probably not going to happen anytime soon, unless I have a crazy weekend one time. I don't know. But like, there's no immediate plans to add this. We've got like quite a busy schedule on what we want to add already. But I would love to see us do something like kind of challenges, like maybe you kind of start the game and it's got like a kind of predetermined board and you've kind of got an objective on the board to complete, stuff like this. I think that kind of stuff could be pretty cool. And I'm sure, and similar things for like, maybe there's some kind of collaboration style events where, maybe there's some like boss that you have to take down in some way or something. But this is like way down the line, right? So the answer is not no, just not yet.
Cool. Yeah, I think. Obviously, I've seen some of these changes, but actually, to say I'm in the stream, I'm actually sat here, just watching all this, and I agree with pretty much everything everyone's saying. It looks fantastic, as well as the changes are definitely, life improving for the game. I think it's really cool what you guys have done. And much like everybody else, I'm definitely hoping to see this next week and people kind of to play and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. I mean, I did allow like 2 hours for this whole stream. Didn't think it'd take that long, so I don't know if you just want to keep playing, letting people watch.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I
Yeah.
also noticed one question actually. So Summerflame asked like player 1, player 2 balance. So right now we have no specific kind of adjustments for player 2. We did experiment with a few things, but we kind of landed on where it's at. So right now you kind of both start off with the same hand, and it's just like player 1 is obviously goes first. Something that we need to look at. So once games start getting played, we need to really look at the data and see like, hey, is player 1 actually winning more than player 2? Is player 2 winning a lot more than player 1? Stuff like this. So it's something that we need to just kind of monitor and then come up with a solution once we notice that it is a problem. So yeah, and obviously feedback from people that are playing would be always appreciated on that front as well. Of course, Julian is playing big board, and he's he doesn't have enough points.
Nah,
for
I'm done. Yeah, I screwed up. I had the wrong unit, and then the turn before I also screwed up. I just noticed. But it's cool. Like I had my unit in my hand because I didn't buy enough, and then I had a lot of attachments that had card draw, but the only unit I had on the board, the slot was filled, so I had to skip on one turn. And no, I actually screwed up to not enhance him. But the sapling, so yeah, you see what it is.
You know, for myself as quite a new player as well, I think the 90 seconds, I saw somebody say before that as a new player, they think it might be a bit challenging. But obviously, I'm assuming we still have the lobby where it's as much time as you like. Well, we do, obviously,
Yes.
don't we? So as a new player, if you're really still trying to kind of get to grips with the game, jump in the lobby, you know, you again put in our Discord as well, you know, looking for game, but you could even just put, you know, looking for a casual lobby game. Is anyone want to help me train? That kind of thing. So that's still an option as well.
I see 2 versus 2 question mark. I think we need to focus on the 1v1 first, but I'm not opposed to a 2v2 one day. Yeah. I'm just flicking through some of the new native cards for people to have a look at because it might have been hard to catch them during the game. Like I said, every card through native has been kind of revamped in some way, balanced, and we intend to do the same thing for Mech and Cyborg over the coming weeks. Essentially, once those are ready, they will be pushed out as additional updates. Yeah, when those are ready. Yeah. Just flicking through. Planning a leaderboard. Yes, we can talk about what's coming, right, Julian? Is that fine?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, so after 111, our goal is going to start moving much more towards kind of getting a reward loop in. One element
but
of
Aaron,
the reward loop.
If you explain, you have to fight me. Come on, game.
Okay. I was like flicking through. I was flicking through cards. All right, I just pick a random suitcase. Okay, so yeah, so after 111, the next priority is going to be on. So yeah, firstly the Mech and the Cyborg revamps, but kind of parallel to that is we're going to start working on this like event loop, this reward loop. Sorry, and that reward loop, the first part of which is going to be getting ranking rewards going. So essentially, the way that we're planning for that to work is every 2 weeks, a new ranking kind of cycle will begin. And at the end of the 2 weeks, based on your position in the rankings, are we fine to talk about rewards? Are we? Just checking.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So basically, at the end of the 2 weeks, you will be rewarded with alpha fame based on your position in the ranking, and it kind of the amount that you receive kind of gets lower and lower. So it's not just the top 3, it's not just the top 5. As there are more and more kind of people that participate, the rewards are kind of spread out. The first 3 positions are kind of like fixed rewards, and then after that, it will kind of get less and less based on how low on the ranking you are. And I think the system we're discussing is like in order to kind of qualify for any given cycle is you have to play 10 games. So as soon as you play 10 games, you're now qualified to receive alpha fame at the end of that 2-week period. And that will be like on a recurring basis. So that's one element. Another element of that is obviously going to be this event system that we kind of experimented with before. I'd love to do a lot more of those, which can, hopefully we can come up with some cool ideas for rewards, whether it's again more alpha fame or potentially crates or potentially like cosmetics within the client, stuff like this. So whatever we can think of, whatever fits. So more events. And also something else that we've just started discussing, we probably not at the time that's kind of set in stone or what the rewards are going to look like, but I would love to also be adding kind of like daily and weekly quests in a way, like rewards, just again to just kind of finalize that reward loop so that we have something for everyone, something for those that want to play more, something for those that just play a little, stuff like that. So yeah, that's where we're kind of going to hopefully go next after 1.11 alongside the Mech and Cyborg revamps. Oh, I just realized it's my turn. I hope that answers the question, Summer Flame. So yeah, there will be a ranking reset along with those changes.
Yeah. I think basically on every week we try to get much closer to the original vision that we had, and obviously we want to have some reward system, which probably was spent a lot of times already. But starting point was always that like while we're still in this alpha phase, we already want to have this kind of like reward system in place where we said, hey, well later on, of course, we add different rewards on top that can be just like certain currency, stuff like that also connect to like kind of like real world value. But just for this like testing phase, we want to go with this alpha fame that then you can use to purchase stuff. And it's in the making in the background. So we are also like really working on something that people can spend their alpha fame on. So it's not just like this number that's just picking up and you collecting and collecting. So that will not be next week, but it's like also being worked on in the background. So I'm also really excited to kind of like see this reward loop going on. I know that many people have asked for it, so just a little bit of teaser is not too far away.
There's another question there as well. Will there be chat in game? Example in lobby?
I'd say there's no immediate plans to add a chat. I think when it comes to a chat in game specifically, it can be quite toxic. So probably not in the game itself. I think I prefer to stick to like emotes. But for the lobbies, it could be something to discuss.
Yeah, probably could be kind of like a side feature that maybe we integrate. We have talked about it a lot, done in team internally already. Just for the fact that there are also now a lot of beginners, right? And it could be maybe helpful that you have a way to communicate with them. So, right, just give them a little bit of tips, or if somebody's very lost and maybe has a question here, how can I do this or that maybe somebody can answer. Whatever it is, might be helpful for the final game. Probably leaning more towards emotes, towards like toxicity, but could be something we may want to do in the it's just like I said, so people can support each other. I think the group of testers is not too crazy big right now, so it's I think it's still very very friendly group of players, and I don't know, so far I never, also like in the Discord chat, right? It's like for the people that have been testing now, they are all very helpful and supporting each other and giving hits and tips like how to get better and stuff like that. So if we could have that in the game as well, would be cool. Depends a little bit of prioritization and how we have the ratio between that's like real changes we really want to get in and test, compared to a little bit of this like nice to have and convenient features in this client version.
Yeah, and I think so someone mentioned having like a social list and like a friend list, and being able to chat between friends. I think that is completely fine, right? I don't think I think that's kind of like the social features will definitely exist at one time. It's just
sure.
When it comes to like chats between random players, it's like then you have the kind of topic of like toxicity and like moderation of that chat, which obviously brings along its own problems. That is the main thing. I want to play this. Oh, that's not the card I wanted. Oh no, I could have manipulated that in a better way.
Yeah, I think Summerflame there's made a good point of, Discord handles chat fine. It's a very active Discord. People chat away in there and ask for help and tips and stuff. So I think as long as, people are directed to that, I think it'll be fine. But yeah, his put emotes though, I agree. I think having emotes in a game will be awesome. Especially because most of my emotes will just be me crying.
I mean, chat could be helpful to direct people to Discord.
Yeah.
Well, we do have the we've got the button on the homepage now which says like, join the community on Discord. So when you click that, it will take you straight through to Discord now. So maybe the people who have been testing didn't know that we even had a Discord. They can actually get there through the client now. Yeah.
As well, on this Twitch channel as well, just below in the About section, there's a whole bunch of buttons. One of them will take you straight to Discord as well. So obviously, if you are new here and you've not joined our community yet, feel free.
Ooh. Okay, let me put this one, even though I don't have native units. Let's go.
Are you sure you want to play more units than me? And one of them has 100 life? Thank you. Yum, nom, 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 nom.
You really like this urban ambush now, right?
Yeah, I mean, the, what do I say? Like, the current version on Genesis of Urban Ambush is, like, too crazy. This is just, like, it's still crazy in the right circumstances,
Yeah. But still, I think every game we played, you use it, so I should really buy it away from you.
It's useful. It's a useful one. What do I want? What do I want? What are you playing? Let me use my strategy terminal to check what you're playing. Okay.
Yeah. So Vixel asked, will rare card pulls from crates do have a global announcement? I'm not sure if I understand the question right, but
Okay.
yeah, there's like
I think it's like
a Discord channel. Yeah. So there's like a Discord channel that announces if there's a card being drawn that like exceeds a certain rarity. So for example, if you would open a crate now, you get
So in the game, will there be like an announcement saying, "Hey, a rare card has just been pulled"?
Yeah, got it.
It's an interesting idea. Could be cool.
Well, I don't know if I would want to have it if I'm in a match right now. Maybe not, but like if I'm just in the client or
just
something,
in, like, the home screen.
Could be that could be fun announcement.
It could also be similar like to like other things where they do like maybe just amongst friends as well. Like if your friend pulls something cool. I guess there's like different approaches. Could be interesting.
Yeah, definitely a new question.
Do I want any?
Didn't really pay attention what you bought. Aaron, after the stream, we need a few games.
Yeah. Oh, soon it'll be live. You can play all the games you want.
That's true.
Yeah, I think for next week's stream as well, I might just jump on and play this new client and let people beat me. Community spirit and all by letting them beat me.
They'd have no chance if you actually tried. So.
Yeah, if I tried, I am. Whoa. If I decided,
fair, I feel like it's kind of like ground base again. Like so many changes, I think everybody kind of like has to start a little bit from scratch again to get used to the new mechanics and stuff like that. Like even me, I'm not even close to having an overview. Few things I really enjoy and usually play, but not necessarily always the best strategy. So it's like just a lot to explore.
Synergy's Masked. Will there be sound effects besides visuals? I'd say so. Obviously, in the Unity version, yes. This version probably not on the sound effects thing, just because there's so much stuff to get kind of implemented. That something like sound effects is probably not the priority. We'd rather obviously get the mechanics how we want them, the cards how we want them, all the event stuff in, the fun stuff. I mean, obviously, sound effects are like super important, but that would take away time from something else to implement and make it feel nice. So I think it's more something for the real client. Oh, the new Cridian Hive Defender. Look at that big boy.
Mm-hmm.
How did you give him taunt? Why has he got taunt? What did you do?
Mm-hmm.
What did you? How did he get taunt?
Well, that's actually a good question. I literally have no idea. Must be some
maybe.
enhanced.
Okay.
Was it?
It might be missing from the description. Yeah, it might be missing from the description. I'll get that fixed.
Yeah.
Oh, you killed all my
I mean,
stuff.
it's a defender,
Okay,
right? So it has taunt. Makes sense.
You've got 3 units with 100 health again, Julian. Oh boy.
No.
Oh boy.
Come on, man. Come on, man.
How do I? Okay, let's do this. The draw. That's so unfair. What I wanted. That's kind of cool. Ooh, that's what we want. Okay, now we're good. So this comes back to the kind of synergy stuff that we were talking about earlier, right? So because I have cards that can kind of draw other cards, I was able to get the cards I need to now clear this board, deal some damage. My stuff sticks because I got the attachments that give it health. I'm hoping it sticks anyway, because, yeah, that might be an issue if it doesn't.
Yeah, that's a good chance.
Nope. Okay, it doesn't stick. So I need to fix that. I need to fix the temporary health on that one. Actually, was it temporary? It's temporary. Yeah, I need to fix that one.
Don't have native units again. Why not?
But yeah, what's the overall sentiment on this? I'm curious. What do people think of this? Of the changes? It's very, very drastic. There's probably more things different than there are the same as the existing version.
I mean, obviously, I've been watching the chat. Hopefully, we'll get some more comments in a sec. But from what I've seen, yes, there's been a few questions, but it's been very positive. The reception of it, quality of life, that kind of thing. Yeah. I do agree with what Julian said before. Everyone's starting again in a sense, because it's a whole new learning curve that we're all going to have to kind of have. So I might have a chance of winning a few more. Tammy Badger's saying appreciates the bold changes. Max very much likes the changes. Super stoked. Yeah. Everyone seems pretty happy about these. So, yeah. Good job on these. And
exciting. And yeah, I think it's actually important to point out is Tammy Badger saying, appreciate the bold changes. I think that's that basically summarizes what we did. Is up until now, we've kind of looked at what existed in the game and looked at it from the angle that it kind of has to exist. Whereas this was the first time where we kind of said you know what, let's just look at every mechanic, and if we don't, if we want to try something, we just try it. Doesn't matter how crazy the idea. And by kind of doing that over and over and over again, you can kind of see here on the version number, it says the letter P. Now, each letter indicates a different iteration. So you can kind of see how far through the alphabet we've gone with different concepts. With this one being the latest. But yeah. So
yeah, I mean,
to say anything goes, just try it, and yeah.
Yeah, maybe at some point we can do that stream. We just talk about the changes that we didn't introduce, which is about probably 3 times as much as we know introduced, but don't want to confuse the people. But yeah, there were just really like certain elements we tried just for one purpose, whatever, 3, 4, 5, 6 ideas. One example is like, okay, how do we limit the amount of units that you play per turn in a proper way? Where, yeah, we really had like limitations on the amount of units. Then we had speed. We had like a point system to that. So yeah, just like different things that we tried there. And I mean, before we have heavily tested it, it's never perfect. But yeah, I already tried to kind of like abuse, just only buying units and stuff like that, and try to win. But just the fact that you get so many boni now through the attachments and the powers, and like I wouldn't even be able to like enhance any unit for the game probably. So yeah, I just have this kind of like empty frames with not much power, no effect. So not really a good chance to win this game then. So yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of trying, and was really fun process.
Okay, I've got a question for you then. What was the craziest mechanic you decided, oh, let's try this, and then after you'd done it, you just were like, that was a no?
I think one thing that
I know.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
So one iteration we tried just making the river fully random, meaning any card could show up at any time. Yeah, that didn't work very well. We originally we tried without this speed system, because we really didn't want any resources, right? And then we tried a few different things before, in order to like limit the amount of cards you could play instead of the cards you could acquire, but without using energy. And yeah, so one of those ideas was saying, hey, the river's completely random. Any card can show up at any time. There's no fixed slots anymore. But yeah, that didn't work so well because you could get some pretty crazy stuff pretty quickly.
Yeah, it was really like we went into the game, and first river I got something like a Krieger or something. I bought it and we're like, wait, it's not going to cost any energy, right? So I can just play it next turn. That's not how it should be. But it was just the fact that before we tried a different point system to kind of like limit what kind of units you can play on the board. And in that scenario, I would have been able to buy it, but I wouldn't been able to play it, which was also one approach that we thought about. Because the idea was, hey, like even if there's nothing in the river that you need right now, maybe there's already something that you need later to kind of, like get to your final strategy. So why not allow people to buy it already, right? And then you already have it. You kind of like try to build up this like whatever end deck of like 20, 25 cards. And if this is a piece of it, you can already buy it. Probably takes a few turns until you can play it because it's so strong. But yeah, then we just like, I don't know, didn't feel perfectly fine. We kind of like scrapped it. Another argument that we made was like, okay, what if then you have again this games where like, I don't know, 3 of the 6 cards are always cards that you can never play. Yeah, you can already buy them and to build your strategy, but maybe it doesn't really feel right. At the same time, it's a bit of a randomness again, right? If there are like always a lot of cards that you just can't play right away, so you could have like impact on that and just lose out because of it. So yeah, but it was fun. It was fun. It was yeah. I think we have it. We have it. A game, and then first turn Krieg. I'm like, wait, there's something wrong here. A good example.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, it would have still been interesting to see that happen. But I can definitely see why you didn't go with that.
Yeah, like we said, we really tried a lot of things, and in the end, we kind of like try to go with the things that just feel right. I think it was also like talked about in the last stream. We have a certain image in our head just for how the game should feel. So even if we solve like certain problems, and I think that's what Aaron mentioned was the thing before, we solved certain problems, but it still didn't have the right feel to it. Like even though you had solved that, cards don't stay relevant and you can remodel them, you have a solution, but like doesn't necessarily feel very good or not. And yeah, there were voices in the chat, hey, I kind of like will miss remodeling. We will see, right? If you do tell us, we can bring it back if it just makes sense. But in the best case, and that's where a lot of change came from. You don't have like all these extra buttons and extra features to solve certain problems. They just, naturally evolve. And of course, it's like not always, sorry, not evolve, but dissolve. Like, of course, it's not always possible. So you have certain limitations, but we just try to get, as close as possible with just saying, hey, the main mechanics already solve this problem. As for example, playing a mass amount of units. Like if it just doesn't make sense, people won't do it, right? Instead of saying, hey, let's always limit to this counter and we show it somewhere and you have to remember it and do the calculations, la la la. So yeah, I think that was like a big approach to this.
Someone's just asked, any plans on a crazy mode with changing rules? Something like you can draw everything in this mode this month.
I think this kind of thing would be cool for like events, as like game modes that are like temporarily available on the side. But for this client is probably unlikely just because we want to really focus on getting the core game to the point where we're happy with it first. So probably something for like way down the line as well.
And then there are also always artifacts, right? Which kind of like make the game a little bit more fun, but yeah, not crazy in terms of like changing the game rules itself.
Question: will transcendent cards be usable in the prototype, or is it to the Unity client only?
I would say let's see.
Yeah, who knows?
Cool. Okay then, guys. Let's do one more draw.
And I think
who else do we get?
Should we go one more game where we just concentrate a little bit more on the playing than the talking? It has been
2 hours. I think we can. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, including the countdown. But I think we've gone over everything. Obviously,
the already addicted to this
available for the recording will be available to go back and watch. And then patch notes hopefully will go up probably tomorrow. It's going to be a chunky one. And I think we can do a couple keys or something, and then we can leave it on that.
Just as always, I mean, keep an eye on the announcement channel in Discord. You will get all the information. Don't miss out. And like we're super excited to see your games, hear your feedback, and just get people on playing the game and see how the ball changes go. I'm like super excited for that.
Cool. Well, I have done a total of 10 draws. We've got 10 winners, which it's announced as we've gone. So if you're on my list, I will give you a message shortly with a key. And we'll also sort out some crates, I think, if that's okay with the big boss Julian here.
Yeah, sure.
There we go. So everybody that has one, we will send you a crate as well.
I've just seen in the chat that there are like a lot of people I know they have access to the game. So probably for them it's
give it to a friend.
More fun.
Well, this is
sure. I mean, for sure. Yeah.
Well, we'll send them a key anyway. And the first person that won was Tammy Badger, and
exactly.
But, they can give that key to someone they know, or whatever you like. But this has been a great stream. It's been awesome just to kind of like watch what you guys have been working on. Generally can't wait to play it. But I think that's it from us for this week then.